Hi guys, and welcome back to the Stoic INFP. So the topic of today's video is going to be avoiding narrativizing the past. So what do I mean by narrativizing the past? Well, put simply, INFPs are natural storytellers. We are really good at making sense of our world and the worlds of other people through stories. We tell ourselves stories about everything, about our problems, about our future, about the way people treat us. We tell ourselves stories, right? And I think this comes from a place of trying to understand why people act the way they do. So, narrativizing the past, in a way, can be a sort of comfort. It helps us to process parts of the world that maybe we are not yet fully understanding. But I would argue to be cautious, to not over-narrativize the past. Okay? So, for example, let's say you've had a breakup. You've been in a long-term relationship, right? You've been together for a long time, and then for whatever reason, you break up. And the two of you go separate ways, and over time, you start to process the breakup, right? You process the grief of the shared relationship you had. Now, INFPs, we are deeply emotional people. We feel deeply for those that we care about, particularly when it comes to romantic relationships. We throw everything at a relationship, sometimes maybe overly devoted, maybe you could say, which can be a good thing when it's to the right person. It's certainly not good if it's to a person who does not appreciate you. And I would caution maybe younger INFPs not to overinvest in someone who does not appreciate the gift you give to this world, which is your sensitivity. Don't give that out freely to anyone who asks for it. You need to gatekeep who you think is worthy of your love. Okay? So, when it comes to a relationship that's ended, we sometimes process the pain, the loss, the grief of that relationship through narratives. Because it's what helps us to understand why it ended. The problem that happens when we do this is that we end up in a loop, a kind of cycle, if you will, where we will process the relationship and we will tell ourselves a story of why it ended. But that story does not stay the same. Sometimes we add or change parts of the story, depending on how we are feeling at that given moment. Because as INFPs, we see the world through an emotional lens. So I would caution INFPs to not over-narrativize past events. What should you do instead? A really good piece of advice comes from Stoicism, the philosophy of Stoicism, as my channel is named after. Stoicism is not about suppressing your emotions. Instead, it's finding a way that helps you to process and understand them better. Okay? Now, for an INFP, this is very important. How we choose to process our grief will depend on how soon we overcome that grief. So, I would suggest taking what the Stoics called a view from above. So, Stoics would say to imagine you are seated where you are, and then picture yourself from above. You're looking down at yourself. Okay? Then you zoom out. You zoom out to the wider world until you're in the sky, until you're in the clouds, you go to space, and you are tiny now. You're just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And you're viewing yourself from above. Then I want you to think about not just the story you tell yourself about what happened in the relationship or the event. I want you to think about the other perspectives. Think about the person the other person in the relationship. How have they processed it? Maybe how did they see the relationship? This will start to allow you to ground yourself in the truth. That is, the stories we tell ourselves are often just that, stories. You need to try your best to see the world through how it is, which is the truth is often not black or white. It is often grey and seen from different people's viewpoints. So, I would caution INFPs to do their best to look at things from a more objective, you could maybe say rational or maybe more logical perspective, right? That isn't to say you shouldn't grieve, and that isn't to say you shouldn't try to understand what happened and how it has affected you. But what I am saying is, be cautious of not getting caught up in a loop of a story you tell yourself about what happened in this event. Okay? So I hope you found this video helpful, and I would love to know in the comments your own experiences of maybe narrativizing the past. How did you narrativize the past? Okay, that's the end of this video, and stay stoic.